Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. We've got a fun episode. We're continuing the conversation as we've been talking about all week of what's happening in early stage venture capital and seed investing. So whether you're an investor or you're an entrepreneur, investing, making early stage bets, or as an entrepreneur looking to raise maybe your first and or second round, what do you need to know? But again, what's happening? And more importantly, what's it like inside of an investor's head? How do investors think? How do they prepare to make investments? And what industries maybe seeing more traction than others when it comes to the early stage venture space? And I'm joined by two outstanding co-hosts today who will be walking through all of this with me. But a big thank you to everyone tuning in, and make sure that you click like and share the episode, subscribe to tune into all today's content and much more on VCTV. Check us out on LATOKEN.com to hear from today's speakers and all speakers of the VCTV family. The comments box is open, so feel free to say hi. Let us know where you are around the world. We'll give you a shout out. Also, any questions, comments, we'll do our best to ask them in real time. If not, we're all available 24/7, 365 online. With that being said, I'm your host. A big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making today's episode possible. Welcome, co-hosts. Gavin Johnson, you're first up. A little intro and a little background for everybody.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Kyle, and thanks a lot to VCTV and LATOKEN for inviting me on. It's always fun. So my background is broadly is law and also some sort of science engineering, that kind of thing. But more recently, I've been, I suppose, stepping my toe in the big waters of angel investing and more startup strategy advice, particularly from a legal perspective as well, but also around a little bit around funding. So that's my sort of general background. But I suppose in terms of my investment work, if I can call it that, he said laughingly, I do look at, I suppose, any opportunity that makes sense. All opportunities are welcome for consideration, of course. Particularly recently, I've been looking at a lot of fintech. There's a number of new fintech rails coming in, which is quite interesting. A little bit of biotech, which is always, I suppose, very timely given the COVID situation. And also, I've been looking at a little bit of sort of fund open web. I will probably touch on DeFi, whatever you want to call it, as well. And just generally in the built environment space, I'm currently developing a legal practice around built environment technology. So we think about things like smart cities, modern methods of construction, construction technology, that kind of area, things that improve the built environment more generally. I'll leave it there because I could go on and we'll be here for hours.
Well, as a co-host, that's what you get to do. You get to go on and no one stops you. It's perfect. By the way, hi, everybody. We've got a couple comments that have come in. It's a pleasure to see you all today, and thank you. Raghu, next up, co-host number two today. Welcome to the show. A little intro, a little background for everybody.
Thank you, Kyle and VCTV. I'm a serial entrepreneur, strategic advisor, and angel investor from Princeton, New Jersey. My company, Harvesting Enterprises, helps early stage companies or any stage companies from seed through harvest. We've been focusing on de-risked impact investment type of opportunities in green tech, clean tech, cybersecurity, and any kind of high tech area, which is has an MVP beyond the concept stage. And I try to help companies where I can provide value.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Raghu. So gentlemen, I just want to kick it off and hear both your perspectives on what's happening in early stage venture capital right now. I mean, we've talked a lot about this subject throughout the week, and I've gotten a lot of different perspectives from different regions around the world to different technologies and industries. We talked yesterday a little bit about what is happening in and throughout North Africa. We talked a little bit about what's happening in the United States to Latin America, South America, covered in India as well, a little bit into Southeast Asia. As we know, I mean, this is just, it seems like a feeding frenzy from the investment side. I mean, we are seeing more capital deployed, at least I am, from what I'm following in terms of headlines and companies and things that I'm looking at as well, to Gavin's previous point, I mean, it is just capital everywhere. And these early stage rounds have become increasingly competitive, where some companies I'm seeing comments online now that are receiving tens to hundreds of requests of investors wanting to get in before they've even opened or before they've even considered starting conversations. And some of those, to Gavin's mention of DeFi and fintech, others are in surrounding industries where people are just excited about the digitization we're going through and are just finding great companies to fund. Now, doesn't mean everyone's getting funding, doesn't mean it's always easy, and it doesn't mean that all those companies out there raising have that kind of interest, but nonetheless, would love to hear your both your perspectives. I mean, as angels, what are you seeing? What is happening as well? So, Gavin, let's kick it off with you.
What am I seeing? It's a frenzy. I think that's probably the right word, Kyle. Frenzy. I don't know if it's been a bit of a hibernation period, and it's like in the UK, and I only speak for the UK. So there was a big lockdown. Everybody stayed at home, and the government, in their degrees of wisdom, said, okay, lockdown's over. And so what did everybody do? Everybody left their homes, went to the shops, because they couldn't have done that for 3 months or whatever. And it seems a bit like that for investors. And everybody's sort of gone into hibernation and sort of kept track of things. People have been sort of in their homes beavering away on new ideas, and there's a new deck and a new proof of concept and MVP and so on. And it comes out, and then it's, oh, right, now let's find some investment. And then there's all these investors who've done the same thing, and they've been, I don't want to say hoarding their cash, that sounds terrible, but they've not really been active. And then suddenly all the funds and all these new ideas have been unleashed all at the same time. And there's this chaos, this just absolute frenzy of people looking for money. That doesn't mean to say, as you said, that everything's obviously not necessarily the greatest of ideas, but there's a lot of movement, and I'm particularly seeing a lot of fintech, a lot of crypto projects as well coming out. Clearly people have had time to work on the dev, and it's been unleashed. There's lots and lots of like pre-farming sort of farming periods going on as well, I've noticed, but it's just coming alive, and people are seeing. I mean, my particular interest, as I say, around fintech and build tech, if you want to call it that. But there's a lot of activity, and I think there's a lot of drive as well, possibly driven, at least in part, by COVID. Is everybody working at home and everybody now asking questions? What do we want society to look like as we begin to unlock? Do we just want to go back to the office? Some people do, some people don't, and they want to reimagine that slightly. So those sorts of tools, different ways of working, I don't know, even methods of transport, even methods of finance, it sort of begins to bleed into the entirety of human society. But yeah, and there's all kinds of crazy ideas out there. We'll probably spend the rest of the hour listing all of the ones that we've seen that are just mad off the wall. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting time.
It is, and you're right. I mean, for part of last year, there was a pause, and it was focusing very much on investors focusing on their portfolio companies. Now, why that's important for two reasons. One, it's important to know that capital still has to be deployed. So if you don't make investments for 4 months or for 5 months, you got to play catch up. Still have to spend that money within the mandated year. Why that's also important is that as those out there listening are looking to go raise their next round or their first round, for that matter, that's a question you should be asking. Is during 2020, how did you support your portfolio companies? How did you work with them? How did you help them? How did you manage risk with them? Because to Gavin's point, I mean, as investors, we're looking at that, all of us, we're looking at our portfolio companies and saying, okay, how can we help you this? How can we make sure this is okay? Let's talk through this. That's important for you, entrepreneurs, to know, so that in the future, when you get into a tough spot, if your company or the markets get into a tough spot, you understand how your investors have supported others in the past and may be able to support you. So to Gavin's point, maybe it's not one-to-one per se. This is a very unique situation, but nonetheless, it's good to ask that question as well. And thank you, Raghu, to you. I mean, what are you seeing happening in this space on the East Coast right now in general? But what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think companies with clear plans and strong teams. There's actually a lot of money out there, and this is a good time to go out and raise money. And the core technologies like for digital transformation, big data, AI, cybersecurity, cloud. There's a lot of activity happening because the pandemic has only accelerated the digital transformation. So that, and then now with the new emphasis on the environment and climate change, there's a lot of money going to renewables and clean tech. I think both grant money is also available. So I think this year is still going to be very good in terms of uh, new investments coming in at a high rate. The issue that I see is that some of the pandemic stuff is now waning off, even though the pandemic doesn't want to go away, right? Especially, I think things around the vaccine. I think now it is kind of moved to next gen, as I guess finding boosters and covering multiplex type of testing and things like that. So which is good, but the variant stuff we have to see. Hopefully, it's going to the herd immunity kicks in before it becomes a big issue. So in some parts of the world, it's kind of, as you know, it's again gone into lockdown mode and things like that. So so I think the key issue is to well, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. I'm seeing activity like I think Kyle was mentioning everywhere. In fact, I'm in an exit right now where the money is coming from Singapore, the company's IPs from India, and the buyer is in the US. So it's just kind of came together very, very quickly with all virtual due diligence. And so I think it's a good time. Make sure you have very good team, including a extended advisory board, which is very, very important.
So with that being said, Raghu, talk to us a little bit about what's happening around bio and security. I want to dive a little bit deeper into industry because Gavin mentioned fintech and DeFi. I mean, we could talk, to his point, we could talk for hours on that. I mean, I can rattle off names that we talked a little bit earlier this morning on blockchain and crypto today that were just fundraising. I mean, there's tons of money. We're seeing fundraisings from low single digit million, so 1 to 2, to an announcement of 2.5 to 3.5 million today for someone, all the way up to low double digits, so 10, 12, 15 million as again first seed round investments. But outside of fintech, let's dive into bio and security. Talk to us a little bit of bio first, and then we'll come back to security.
Yeah, bio, as I said, the kind of vaccine-focused areas, I think there were a lot of players, and obviously the big ones came out ahead. But from the early stage, I think the other areas are now getting attention. Diagnostics is still very big because of these variants, and being able to do fast diagnostic is very important, because to open up the economy, it doesn't help to get RT-PCR test result come out in whatever it is, 8 hours or 24 hours. In some cases, even still, people are doing 72-hour testing, which is kind of meaningless because by the time you get the result, they might have been infected. So I think the testing is very important, and still to avoiding the spread. I think technologies around hygiene and safety, especially automated monitoring, using kind of visual recognition AI type of applications are still in vogue, because I think when the economy opens up, there's a new emphasis on hygiene and compliance, right? So that those kind of technologies are, I think, coming through now that there may be travel happening, as well as vacationing and hospitality industry, issues that come to the fore, right? Now in the summer. So I think that part, and then we are going back to the focus areas like oncology and some of these areas which kind of took a back burner a little bit, and they are now coming back strongly. And also the repurposing existing drugs to address things related to COVID. I think that's a very important area, because now that somewhat the vaccine is controlling the infection, the more advanced cases, how do we treat that? That I think there is some focus there. especially using nasal and kind of less invasive techniques that can help reduce hospitalization. I think I see a lot of new funding going there as well. And so there is a lot of government grants available now, trying to open up the economy in infrastructure. And part of that is in this biotech area. And also they're trying to stockpile, vaccines and some of these other things that are needed. Of course, PPE was a big one, but there are also all related things that they will need to add to the stockpile. So I see a lot of government spending in that space. And to add to that, to cybersecurity area, cybersecurity, as you know, covers every area. So especially data protection, and with ransomware going crazy, anything, if people can focus on ransomware, that is the hottest area right now, because the amount of ransomware losses, I mean, just going through the roof. People also don't want to talk about it because I know it makes it look bad for them. So what we are seeing is only the tip of the iceberg. There is huge opportunity in being able to tackle ransomware. And I think, out of the box thinking technologies that are decentralized cybersecurity technologies where system breach does not translate into data breach. I think those kind of approaches are needed. I mean, the traditional, preventive and reactive approaches need to be in place. But in case a breach happens, we want to be able to protect the data. There is another technology called privacy enhanced computation, where while the data is being used, it is secured. That is still not become mainstream. Some of the larger companies are working on it. Technology called homomorphic encryption. So I think there's a lot of interesting opportunities. Some of them are very critical, like ransomware solution.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Raghu. This is very important. I mean, we've talked about cybersecurity a number of times in general here, and we're starting to see more focus on more areas, and hope that we see even more, especially with the amount of data that we have being generated by our products, services, and applications. And the fact, as Gavin mentioned, we're all working from home or still in flexing of that work. And because of that, these digital lives that we're living, there's so much more data, and we have to be protected from these types of things, whether it be phishing scams, whether it be, again, just data leaks and security. This is stuff that has to be attended to. So to entrepreneurs listening, Raghu, in this bottom box right here, this is the guy to reach out to and talk to. Gavin, to you, what are you seeing? Anything to add around bio as well that you may be seeing from your side of the world in Europe?
Yeah, there is a lot of movement in bio, and I don't think I really need to talk about, and probably can't really talk about from a very well informed position anyway. The Pfizers and AstraZenecas and Modernas, all the COVID vaccines that are coming out. But that said, I think I'm right in saying it's the Pfizer vaccine has been developed using a revolutionary, or certainly new, form of technology, and the adaptability of that technology to potentially create vaccines or cures for other diseases. And I think it was the founder, it's a husband and wife team, I forget their names, but the founder was on, I don't know, on the news or something, commenting that this can be adapted to cure cancer. And you kind of think, wow, that's mind-blowing. And the application of technology in this way, not only has it, I suppose, helped us fight back against COVID and the spread of COVID, but will also help us fight back against other human frailties, shall we say, which is impressive application of technology in new technology in this way. But otherwise, there's been a lot of, I suppose, a lot of noise, certainly in the last few months, that I've seen around the application of psychedelics. That's something I've been involved in a little bit peripherally. I mean, I don't know. You just Google that information. I can't add anything. I shouldn't add anything if I did know of inside information in that regard.
Well, but real quick,
I said I'm misleading a lot of people.
I'm going to assume it. So just for a second, I'll assume it, because this is actually a very good point. So when it came to the medical industry, or just bio in general, we'll just bucket it in those areas. From the vice side, which is what it was typically labeled as, let's remove that. now these are fantastic industries that are starting to thrive. We've had a number of founders and investors on over the past week. Shout out to David and his team as well. But cannabis, hemp, psychedelics on the West Coast of the United States is becoming a primary conversation topic on all sides, and not just in the conversation of, this is something we need to pay attention to, but no, this is actually something we want to start using or need to or have started using for things like mental health and recovery, like PTSD as well. I mean, we're seeing it on all levels of psychedelics, I should say. We've also seen a little bit of things like mushroom-based foods coming into play. So we saw CBDs enter into the food space. Now we're seeing things like mushrooms enter into the food space as well. So Gavin, I'll assume it for you so you don't get any kind of potential issue. It is a growing industry, no pun intended, but it is growing exponentially, and it's something. So tell us a little bit more also as well, maybe a little bit around fintech and DeFi, as you brought that up earlier in the show, and what you're seeing. Because on my side, it's crazy town. There is so much activity, and I say that in the best of ways. Of this morning, we saw again a great stablecoin project raise $2.5 million. We saw NYDIG raise another 100 million on top of the 200 million they raised last month. Now that's a late stage round. At the same time, last week we saw rounds from everywhere from, again, 1 million to 10 million in everything from lending and early protocols to the NFT marketplaces to some areas of security, Raghu, around zero proofs and scaling solutions today as well. So instead of me rattling all this off, Gavin, what are you seeing more on the fintech side? As you mentioned, new rails are being laid, and there's some excitement there for you.
Yeah, there is. I think what people are looking for is ease of payment, by and large. And again, it sort of comes out of everybody sat at home ordering stuff online. How can you do that quicker, simpler, get what you want faster, blah blah blah. Well, obviously there's a supply chain issue in it, a logistics issue in and all around all of that. But I'm certainly seeing, certainly through the sort of angel networks I'm involved with, more decks, more opportunities are coming through for alternate payment rails. I have to be a little bit careful what I say, but routes to payment. How can you make payments simpler? Can you disintermediate certain elements of that payment experience? And there's a lot of work to remove bank cards, for example. Okay, we're all used to Apple Pay, and you pick up your phone and you look at your face and you make the payment, or you put your finger on it, whatever it may be. It depends on your version of iPhone. I'm not recommended iPhone or Android. I'm just saying. But thinking through all of that, is there a quicker way? Is there a simpler way that doesn't require, say, credit routes, or that doesn't require, I suppose it's still credit network-backed debit cards and things like this? So can you make direct payments? And that's certainly something that I've seen a lot of in Europe, in particular, in the US as well, but also just recently something very similar in the Middle East, which was quite interesting. Certainly in the sort of the Middle Eastern general region, including the countries peripheral to that. And obviously there's a lot of liquidity in that region, so it kind of makes sense if that's what you're moving towards, is electronic payment mechanism. And because my impression is that crypto, I don't know, I have to be careful because I put my legal hat on and I have to say, well, look, legally it's not what everybody thinks it is. It's not money. It's not a store of value, et cetera, et cetera. But then Elon Musk, our great friend, turns around and says, please pay for your Teslas in Bitcoin, if you don't mind. Okay, thanks, Elon. But that doesn't mean it's an invalid form of payment. It's not confirmed that it's necessarily treated as cash. But that said, this sort of decentralization, this ability, cross-border payments, obviously a big thing. We all know about Ripple and the fun they're having with the SEC. And how do you facilitate that? How do you make that slicker? How do you make that easier? How do you bank the unbanked? And then we get into other, sort of localized social issues, banking the underbanked as well. I should include in all of that. And there are a few startups in that space, which I think is quite exciting. And certainly with the liquidity, the capital liquidity that we mentioned earlier, certainly facilitating those types of things in the developing world is surely a huge opportunity for one thing, but also for those that get in there, a huge advantage as well to drive that sort of local social change. And you see it as well. I should add, I hesitate because I know I'm going on, but there's a lot of you see a lot of tokenization coming out of Eastern and I suppose it's the Southern Asian region, which is very interesting.
And especially on the Middle East, so the UAE actually today announced they have a huge focus to tokenize everything within the region. The minister actually made this a very big statement that they want to focus on tokenization. So you're spot on. Raghu, anything you're seeing around fintech to Gavin's point, or maybe you want to talk a little bit more about security and where we're seeing opportunities there?
Yeah, briefly about fintech. I think fintech, given that there is a lot of retail traders now with all this stuff with Robinhood, there is a lot of emphasis on same-day clearing, which the traditional clearing houses take T+2, and now they're for crypto and stuff, it's T+0, 24 hours, right? So that's kind of dragging everything towards same-day clearing and technologies like that. Of course, regulation is still a factor that is it's being kind of ironed out. But there are companies that have come out even for non-crypto assets, being able to do same-day clearance, right? So that and now there are opportunities where like you can be part of a local exchange and be able to trade across the world. So that kind of facility is coming. So that is something I see having been accelerated by this pandemic. So which is good because we'll all have quicker response, right? Instead of waiting for 2 days for things to settle and come into your account. So that is on the fintech side. On the cybersecurity side, I think the privacy aspect is gathering more steam in the US. It's always been strong in Europe, but I think in Europe, there are more regulatory bodies. In the US, it's still kind of run more by advocacy organizations. Now the CCPA is gathering more steam, and I think the technologies around that, given the size of data explosion that's happening, it's very, very important to have ways to be compliant, both on the privacy side as well as on the e-discovery retention side, because you have to keep around data for discovery for whatever the statute of limitations is, but you also need a way to get rid of the data for privacy purposes. So the technologies that help balance that out are going to be very critical as we move forward. And of course, the raw power is increasing with quantum and some of these other technologies. So the traditional encryption is under risk of becoming easy to break. So we have to find newer technologies. Decentralization is one aspect. The other aspect is use the same quantum technology to come up with better encryption. And both in the hardware as well as in software, that there are technologies that are coming forward, which I think is very exciting area, because just like whenever there is technology advance, it's used by both the good and the bad actors. So hopefully the good actors are a little bit ahead, and so that's the aim. So I think that's an exciting area where the new technologies, we have to kind of move the securing technologies farther along while the bad actors catch up.
Yeah, and Raghu, as we switch gears, thank you. As we switch gears here, let's talk about advice. So I want to be cautious of everyone's time today. So let's talk about advice. Entrepreneurs raising their first or second round, again, early stage seed based rounds. What advice do you have for them in raising this first or maybe second round for their companies out there, especially right now. I mean, there's so much excitement on the industry side. There's so much excitement on the technology, and there's so much excitement on the venture side. So with all that noise, let's clear it. What advice do you have for your entrepreneurs to focus and to get that funding closed? I'll start with you, Raghu, and then Gavin will come to you.
There's a lot of hype, as you said, right? So you have to be able to rise above the hype. Everybody is claiming they're doing everything with machine learning, AI, so you have to be a lot more specific and pick the areas where you actually are providing new value, because everybody claims to be doing, using some of these same buzzwords, right? So you have to, some of these technologies are also becoming democratized. It's not anymore, doing pioneering stuff. It is more become toolkit oriented, where you can apply it very easily to new areas. So I think it's a lot more important to actually focus on the business value that you're creating, and clarify that. Have strong team which has all the different areas covered, and in areas where you do not have depth, if you have a strong advisory board, you could have a business advisory board and a technical advisory board to supplement some of the areas in which your team is lacking. And also this, the advisory board can be very helpful in vetting out your plan and making it, much more refined, so that the investors can easily see the value. Because there's a lot of clutter. People get caught up in the technology. This is not about technology. It's about solving a business problem and creating value. So I think if that focus is there, I think both in terms of getting customers as well as investment becomes easy.
Absolutely. And Raghu, where can everyone find you online as well to continue the conversation if they'd like to connect around the industries that we spoke about?
Sure. I'm usually available on LinkedIn at Raghu S. Rao. And, I'm happy to engage in a conversation and, provide value in terms of advice, to move things forward. I think it's important to have a clarity in both business plan, 3-year, kind of strategic plan, 1-year, operational plan, and 90-day execution plan. I think those things we should keep refining, but that's very important to have kind of balance the long term and the short term.
Wonderful. Thank you, Raghu. Gavin, any closing thoughts of advice?
Well, Raghu said it perfectly. Frankly, I couldn't agree more. I think clarity, being very clear about what it is you're doing, that's important for communicating it to potential angels, because a lot of my questions, certainly when I'm talking to founders, are around, tell me what you're doing. And it's an opening gambit. Obviously, you get to know the people, all the pleasantries, but then ask, tell me what you're doing. Tell me what difference it's going to make. Why should I care? It's a harsh question. It sounds, but why should I care about what you're doing? And if a founder can't answer that question, then of course they're on the back foot, and you're probably on the back foot on the way out the door as well, because you've got to understand what it is. You've got to appreciate the difference it's going to make, and vice versa. But you have to be able to communicate that. So absolutely clarity of thought, but focus as well. And I think, if I remember rightly, I think Kalakanis makes this point in his book around angel investing, or angel, sorry. But it's very important. What is it you are trying to do? Are you focused solely on that? And in parallel to that, please don't bring me an idea that's basically Google with an add-on. That it doesn't move the needle, as we say, far enough. It's not perhaps interesting. It's not revolutionary enough. You do have to find that niche. You have to make a difference in that area that you're focused on. So those things, and of course the business plan, and getting a good advisor to help you with that. It's not to suggest that you're necessarily disorganized, you can't do it yourself, but it's about focus and objectivity, and somebody who's dispassionate. And as a lawyer, it's pretty much what I have to practice on a daily basis is not caring too much. It probably sounds a bit odd, but I have to be objective, and I have to be able to challenge My client will say, "Oh, well, this is the color of the world," and I say, "Well, are you sure about that? What about this? What about that?" But you have to be able to challenge that as well and be prepared for that challenge. And founders should be prepared for angels asking those difficult questions and saying, "Well, no, that's clearly quite nonsense." But that said, find your target audience and find your target investor. There are areas that I just don't know enough about and would never be able to add value to, and that's something that's important for me. Is that okay, writing checks is all well and good, but really, does it help further the cause? And one of the things I think about is, well, what value can I add? You're coming to me, okay, you want money, I appreciate that, but what value can I add? Can I add more? Can I move the needle for you, albeit slightly, in any particular direction that will help you and ultimately help myself? Of course, there is a self-interest to all of this, but it's about making that difference and adding more than some of the parts, some of the whole is greater than some of the parts kind of thing. And that's, I suppose that's a very selfish view, but it's certainly something that I think about is what is it that I can add? And I do try and add a little bit of value, differences of thought, opinion, opportunities in new markets and so on, things like that through my own network.
You do a great job of it as well. So, Gavin, where can everyone find you to connect online so they can make that?
LinkedIn is probably the best place. It's I don't want to say I'm all over LinkedIn. That sounds weird, but I am on LinkedIn. You can probably Google me and you'll find my company, Agenium. We've got a webpage out there. You can get in touch through there. But LinkedIn is probably the best place to start, and I check it regularly and get into a lot of discussions with people through LinkedIn as well before branching out elsewhere. So,
wonderful.
I'd say Twitter, but I don't know, unless you're quite musky in your use of Twitter, I don't think it's particularly interesting.
For those listening, go start to find Gavin on LinkedIn, and if you can't get a hold of him, he doesn't respond, just tag him all over Twitter until he responds. There you go. Raghu, on the other hand, LinkedIn, you'll find him. It'll be easy peasy. Raghu, Gavin, thank you both so much for the time today and sharing your thoughts as to where this industry is going from the early stage venture capital perspective that we've been speaking about all week and today as well. And to our audience, thank you so much. Thank you for all the great comments, all of the hellos. And again, hello to everyone around the world. We greatly appreciate you tuning in and also just saying hi as well. But make sure you click subscribe to hear from more of VCTV and today's speakers. Also like the episode, share it as well, and check out the archive on LATOKEN.com to hear from the entire VCTV family of speakers as well. Make sure you reach out to Gavin, Raghu, and when you do, add context, where you heard him, where you met him, what you would like to continue the conversation about. Big thank you to LATOKEN team and Maria for making today's episode possible. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. You can find me everywhere online at Kyle Ellicott and on all social medias, just like Gavin and Raghu. The difference is Raghu may be on prompt. I may be a little slow on LinkedIn. And just like Gavin, if you can't get a hold of me on LinkedIn, ping me on Twitter and we'll find you. But with that being said, all jokes aside, congratulations and good luck in your fundraising efforts out there. We'll be back here after a short little break with more VCTV to break down the entire blockchain industry and maybe a little bit of DeFi as well. So everyone have a great day. Bye.